Greetings, peace, love, and truth, truth seekers. Keep it true to you. Keep it true to you. Um, so, truth is objective, and I'm gonna prove it right here. This is Matthew LaCroix and Billy Carson disproving the evolutionary fairy tale. And what we've been taught in school is nonsense, and this proves it right here, pretty much. There's tons of evidence. You could go look it up yourself and be an independent researcher and your own scientist instead of relying on idiots who call themselves scientists, who create propaganda for you to be deceived by. But since I'm my own independent researcher and scientist, I'm revealing this truth to you through this video, and I hope it allows you to gain insight and a more grounded sense of reality. So here we go.
Wanted to be able to take claim for everything. And you see it passed down to the pharaohs. The pharaohs, they take claim for a tomb that wasn't theirs. They would take claim for a pyramid that they didn't really build. They take claim for anything because they want to have that. They want to have that reputation that added to their bio.
That legacy, right?
Yeah, that legacy is crazy.
And that's what it really comes down to. And that legacy is what is being fought over right now. That battle has not ended. It's just we don't perceive it the same way because our understanding of linear time is different than perhaps others. We exist in a certain kind of 24-hour cycle based on this 12-hour clock. And it's really interesting if you look at the origins of where that came from and how that rules everything. Because how we perceive time is how we perceive events and how we perceive how things go over the course of history. And I want to bring up a couple little interesting points as we talk about human origins. Is that, and we really touched on that well when Billy was discussing how we download consciousness or we're like antennas for consciousness, and that we're really these beings that are here that didn't arise from just an evolved state. Now, I do believe that human beings are a product that includes a primitive ape, but that as like a blueprint. But that doesn't mean that that's our complete origins. If Let me give you an example. I think this is one of the best examples to really look at this to disprove what has been taught. Billy brought up what's called micro versus macro. Micro means very small. Macro means larger. And that's one of the things that I talk about in the Stage of Time a lot is that, like Lloyd Pye says, evolution, as we've been taught, is much more likely to be on a micro scale than on a macro scale, meaning that small things do happen over time based on the environments and things that occur. But large things either take a really, really long time or they did not happen the way that we're told. And I think the same thing happened with humanity and the human race. Because if you look at how far back the human race goes and everything we've left behind in writings, everything we've left behind in observations throughout time, there's never been one mention ever of an ape that's been observed changing on a level that we can understand that would be related to evolution. Yes, there's apes that can be taught, gorillas and things that can be taught how to read certain things and certain intelligence because they do have an intelligence that can reach a certain level that is rather intelligent, but it's nowhere on the same scale of what human consciousness and the human brain is capable of, or even on the same level. Because when we look at human beings and the fact that we only have 46 chromosomes instead of the 48 that's found in most primates, you really can see that there's been this genetic manipulation that's occurred over time. And I don't even think that happened once. And I want your opinion, Billy, but it seems like if you read some of these stories and what they spoke about in these tablets is that humans were way too smart and way too conscious, and we were potentially tampered with and then dumbed down, right?
That's exactly right. I mean, I just talked about this at a lecture at Disclosure Fest in California a few months ago. The fact that our immediate cousins right behind us, to me, were much smarter than us. Just based off of what I've read and researched, they're probably not maybe technologically smarter, That's potential. That's potentially they were, but I think that they were more smarter spiritually, more in tune with nature, more in tune with the human resonant frequency of the earth. They were using the magnetite crystals in their brains. They may have even been telepathic. They may have had more DNA connected to the avatar system. Right now, we have this quote unquote junk DNA, which is not really junk, it's disconnected. We've been disconnected from the higher realms and higher levels by these Anunnaki people to keep us a little bit more dumbed down. Our brains, our pineal glands are probably shrunk a little bit smaller than our immediate cousins, and making us into this Homo sapiens sapien being right now that we're in this new biological avatar. They've got us in a way where they've kind of put a cap on us, literally. They put a cap on us physically with their telomere caps, and then they put a cap on us. Look, people who don't know what telomeres are, on the end of chromosome number 2, scientists, geneticists discovered that chromosome number 2 was fused together, taken out, fused together, and a cap was put on each end, and these caps are like buffer material of genetic information. So every time that your cell's DNA replicate, nothing gets lost in translation. However, these buffer caps run out of material. And what's interesting is when you go to the biblical account of the Tower of Babel, you discover that human beings were working together on one accord to build this tower to the heavens. And whether it was a space tower, or whether it was a cargo cult type of a tower mimicking what the Anunnaki or these Atlantean people had built, or whether it was just a tower that they came together and decided to build this tower, doesn't really matter. What happens is Enlil, who's known as Yahweh in the modern day Bible, he comes back and realizes the humans are getting too smart. They're getting too intelligent. I mean, this is crazy. He even says out of his own mouth, no matter what they set their minds to do, they can achieve it. So he says at that point, first he destroys the tower, then he says, my seed shall not abide in man forever. So we were living for a very, very long time back then. This is well documented, though. It's written about in a lot of ancient civilizations talk about the fact that human beings were living for many hundreds and sometimes thousands of years. He said, my seed shall not abide in man forever. His years shall be 120. Well, Harvard scientists just recently discovered 2 years ago that under the most pristine conditions, a human being can only live to 120 years, backing up ancient texts with modern science. And then they discovered these telomere caps, and they discovered how to stop the telomere caps from shrinking in mice. So they then had mice living 3 times their normal lifespan with this new technique that they use on telomeres, which means that they can then now do it on human beings as well. So that the possibility for us to live for hundreds of years or even thousands of years is well within reach of modern science at this particular moment. But again, the scientists, like I said earlier, were saying that they don't know who did this, but it happened about 200,000 years ago. This is all really coming together, the culmination of modern science backing up these ancient tablets, adding more credence to what we're talking about, and really adding, right now, giving us the evidence that we need to talk about these topics and bring it to everybody out in the world.
That's right. It was really well said, Billy, and I couldn't agree more. It's, if you think about it as why would that need to be done, right? So if you were, let's call you an overlord of human civilization, if human beings could live for hundreds of years, not more than 1,000 years, think about how much knowledge you could obtain in that amount of time. Think about how much fundamentally you could change and reach these higher states and all of this. So it was realized that, well, it'd be a lot easier to prevent that by just making so they would only die at a certain age, which actually, if you look at the potential of what the Emerald Tablet says and the Sumerian King List and the others about how long even humans or other beings could potentially live, 120 years is like a little flick of your fingers is actually nothing if you look at how far back time goes and how long these civilizations ruled for and all these things. And you brought up those great points, is that here we have scientists that are verifying that these things occurred to our DNA a certain amount of years ago, and you're getting the same cuneiform tablets and back them up by not only saying that human civilization was created at the same time, and then showing the long reigns of these great bloodline kings, proving that human beings also lived longer. Then you see the destruction of all of that and how we had to restart over again, and then the human lives became less and less over time to where we got now. I think that you see all these shows where they talk about the telekinesis abilities of certain special individuals and all of this stuff, and you read the Emerald Tablets and a lot of these ancient texts as well, and they all clearly state that human beings used to have all these gifts, all these abilities, and live a long time, and all those things were taken away from us to prevent a lot of those changes that were occurring, to keep us in this this never-ending loop of what I feel is that we essentially live this life. We expel all the energy until we're done, and then we have to do it all over again, over and over and over again. And that's that chain. I think that's that chain that they did, that undid the chain that allowed them to be free, was essentially making us be the ones that do that life that they used to have to do, having to live another life again and do it all over again and have to grow up again and learn everything. They essentially achieved immortality and were able to rise above that, whereas we're stuck. Not only do we not know the truth, but we're kept in this paradigm as almost like mental slaves, when you say no.
Absolutely. I mean, you hit it right on the head.
All right. That was the revealed truth of this morning. I hope you gained some insight from that, and that you go do your research on what they said and fact check them. If you believe it's wrong, go prove it wrong. Go debunk it. But if you could find evidence, be my guest. But it would have to be counter evidence. So if you could find counter evidence to what they just said, then I'm all ears. But as far as what absolute truth is, that sounded a lot like absolute truth to me in science. So yeah. This is DavG369 signing off. I love you, truth seekers, truth leaders, and let's bring on the golden age of enlightenment. Peace.